These people really do not want Shedeur Sanders winning this job. It's nasty work what's going on. Anthony Lima believes that Shedeur Sanders should get no credit for the positive things he did last season. It is absolutely ridiculous. My man G. Bush broke this whole thing down. We got to get into it. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification and hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated as always. Now, we all know there was a bunch of people like Mary Kay Cabot and others who were saying, oh, the Browns should just end the quarterback competition 2 days into.
There is a silent war happening in the heart of Cleveland, and Shedeur Sanders is right in the crosshairs. It's not just about who can throw a tighter spiral or who can read his own defense better. This is about a deep-seated, almost desperate desire from the media and the establishment to see the Sanders experiment fail. Have you ever wondered why a young athlete with elite stats gets treated like a backup before the pads even come on? It's nasty work, and when you peel back the layers, you realize that for people like Anthony Lima and the old guard reporters, Shedeur Sanders winning the job isn't just a change in the depth chart, it's a nightmare they aren't prepared to handle. The conversation has shifted from football to something far more cynical. We're seeing a coordinated effort to strip Shedeur of any credit for his success while amplifying every single mistake. When he wins, it's because of the system or the receivers. When he loses, the weight of the entire franchise is placed solely
out saying things. The most disingenuous thing ever is to talk about those wins at the end of the year as if he had anything to do with those wins. What do you mean? You credit him for the losses. You don't talk about the game versus Tennessee Titans where he broke a rookie record. You never talk about that, so he shouldn't get credit for that either, huh? Should he not get credit for that because they lost? But he also shouldn't get credit for any wins that he collects along the way either. It's nasty work
on his shoulders. This isn't accidental. It's a calculated narrative designed to protect the status quo. If Shedeur Sanders steps into that locker room and takes the reins, the entire power structure of the Cleveland Browns changes. And that's exactly what the people in the tall buildings are afraid of. But here is where it gets truly dark. There is a nightmare scenario keeping the critics up at night, and it's not what you think. Usually, fans want their highly paid stars to play well, but in this twisted drama, the media is terrified of Deshaun Watson actually regaining his old form. Think about the implications. If Watson plays like a Pro Bowler, the Browns are forced to double down on a contract that has been a PR disaster. They'd have to consider resigning him.
Enough to decide, it really just wasn't enough to figure out if he was going to be the long-term answer. So we just got to move forward. Of course you do. Because the goal is not to be an honest arbiter of whether somebody can be a good player or not. The goal is to get is a ways and ends to a mean. Because guess what? At that point, you can move on from Deshaun Watson. At that point, you can say Shedeur Sanders ain't it.
Extending the very era that many want to forget. The fear isn't that the quarterback will be bad, the fear is that he'll be good enough to make the critics look wrong for the last 3 years. This brings us to the most dangerous tactic currently being played, the strategy of splitting the vote. You'll hear analysts suggesting that it's beneficial for Shedeur to sit for half a season, or that they should split the reps to see what they have. This is a trap. In the NFL, rhythm is everything. By forcing a quarterback competition to drag into the regular season, you effectively ensure that neither player can lead. It's a recipe for mediocrity. They want Deshaun to play 8 games of mid-football.
Vicariously, you have to say Shedeur Sanders has the same set of skills or better if he wins the competition. And I get it. You got to be a thinking person to go what I'm getting. Let me know. Put a 1 in the chat if you know where I'm going. Because maybe I need to talk a little slower. I want everybody to catch what I'm putting down. But the tactic is splitting the vote. The only scenario that makes people happy is this. If I don't want Shedeur Sanders as quarterback, if I don't want this...
Just enough to justify moving on while throwing Shedeur into the fire during the hardest part of the schedule. Imagine being a rookie quarterback, and your first real test comes in late November on the lakefront in Cleveland. We're talking 20-degree weather, 30-mile-per-hour winds, and a ground game that becomes the only viable option. This is the weather trap. By holding Shedeur back until the second half of the season, the team isn't protecting him, they are setting him up for a statistical decline. When the completion percentage drops because of a blizzard, the critics will be right there to say, "See? We told you he wasn't ready for the big stage." It's a setup designed to keep the long-term viability of the Sanders brand in question. The irony of the situation is that these are the same people who claim to want an honest evaluation. But how can you have an honest evaluation when you're already moving the goalposts? We've seen reporters suggest that even if Shedeur plays well in a limited sample size, it shouldn't count because he hasn't proven it over a full season. It's a classic catch-22. You can't prove it because they won't let you play, and they won't let you play because you haven't proven it. The goal isn't to find a franchise quarterback, the goal is to find an excuse to draft a new one in 2027 and start the whole cycle over again. This internal sabotage goes all the way up to the front office. Andrew Berry is a man who prides himself on being the smartest guy in the room, but the Deshaun Watson trade is an anchor around his neck. If he gives Shedeur the job and it works, he admits the Watson trade was a historic mistake. If he sticks with Watson and it fails, he loses his job. The media knows this, and they are using the QB controversy to sharpen their knives for the GM. By advocating for bridge players or late-round prospects like Taylon Green, they are attempting to bypass the Sanders era entirely to save their own credibility. But they forgot one major factor, the coach prime effect. Deion Sanders doesn't play by these traditional rules, and neither does his son. They thrive on the petty energy of the doubters. Every time a reporter tries to downplay Shedeur's achievements, it only fuels the fire. The media thinks they are playing chess with a rookie, but they are actually dealing with a family that has turned being the underdog into a multi-million-dollar empire. The more they try to split the vote or manipulate the schedule, the more they expose their own bias. What happens next is going to shock the league. If the Browns try to play this split-season game, it's going to backfire spectacularly. You can't keep a talent like Shedeur Sanders in a box for long. The locker room knows who the leader is. The players know who has the it factor. While the media is busy checking the weather reports and looking at 2027 draft boards, the reality on the field is becoming impossible to ignore. The nasty work being done in the press rooms is losing its power because, at the end of the day, the tape doesn't lie. As we look toward the future, ask yourself this: why is the establishment so invested in the failure of a young man who has done nothing but win and lead? The answer is simple. Success from the Sanders family proves that the old way of doing things is dead. It proves that you don't need the media's permission to be a superstar. Whether it's the cold winds of the north or the cold shoulder of the local press, the storm is coming to Cleveland. And by the time the critics realize they couldn't stop it, Shedeur might already be holding the keys to the city. The only question left is whether the Browns' leadership is brave enough to let him drive, or if they'll crash the car just to prove a point.